Namaskar. Happy New Year to all. Indian Society for Veterinary Surgery and INTAS welcomes all attendees for this Women Webinar Month. Dr. Nitin Bhatia proposed to have Women Veterinary Surgeons Webinar Month. Our President Dr. Simrat Sagar Singh and myself readily agreed to this proposal of Dr. Bhatia. ISVS values immense contribution of female veterinarians in uplifting veterinary profession. In this Women webinar series, the first speaker is Dr. Aditi Sharma. I request Dr. Divesh Kelawala for introduction of the speaker. Once again, wishing all Happy New Year. Dr. Divesh, please.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Out with the old, in with the new. May you be happy the whole year through. Wishing everyone a safe, healthy and prosperous new year. Happy New Year to everyone on behalf of entire Indian Society for Veterinary Surgery and INTAS. Over the past few decades, there has been a steady and steep increase in the population of rhesus macaques, commonly known as monkey. The population of monkey has grown at an alarming rate during the last decade. According to the last count, there were 50 million monkeys in India, which has resulted in their migration from the forest areas towards the town and cities, and also the cultivated areas. As a result, the reports of conflicts and damage to crops are increasing day by day. With an aim to minimize the conflicts and controlling monkey population, our today's webinar is on laparoscopic sterilization of rhesus macaques as mitigation tool for monkey menace, to be presented by Dr. Aditi Sharma from Dehradun. Dr. Aditi Sharma is a senior veterinary officer at Rajaji Tiger Reserve, Dehradun, with specialization in advanced wildlife management, with a total field experience of almost more than 2 decades. She has completed 6 international wildlife courses like international interventions in wild animal health at London, chemical and physical restraints of African wildlife at Zimbabwe, advanced wildlife chemical immobilization and field practice at South Africa, wildlife restraints and immobilization with special reference to elephants and carnivores, South Africa, elephant health, reproduction and breeding management at Thailand, and zoo exotics and wildlife anesthesia at Greece. She has presented 16 papers in national and 11 papers in international conferences and has received 12 awards till date. Additionally, she also contributes in social programs for women empowerment and women's safety. In view of her expertise in wildlife management and care, I would request Dr. Aditi Sharma to deliver today's webinar on laparoscopic sterilization of rhesus macaques as mitigation tool for monkey menace. Over to Dr. Aditi.
We request Dr. Aditi to start, please. Over to you, Dr. Aditi. The stage is yours.
Yeah.
Okay, a very good evening and Happy New Year to all of you. And without wasting any time, now I would like to start my presentation. Thank you. So I'm sharing my screen right now. And just tell me when you start seeing it. I hope everyone can see my screen.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
Okay. So thank you ISVS and thank you INTAS for this privilege that I can be here today with all of you to share my views and to share what we are doing in state of Uttarakhand, because this is a government policy which under which we are doing the sterilization of monkeys. This in Uttarakhand government has taken this step for the mitigation of monkey menace management. So we have presently we have 6 monkey sterilization centers in the state, and 3 of them are functional right now. So this is about how we are doing the laparoscopic sterilization. Initially, there was a lot of discussion upon like we should go for the open surgical sterilization, or we should go for the minimally invasive procedure. So finally, we decided to go for laparoscopic sterilization and minimally invasive procedures. So we started doing this, and now we have been doing it since 2015. So a lot of sterilizations have been done. Moving on to the procedure, like when we had to start this monkey sterilization program, so first of all, we needed to know that what is the population of the rhesus macaques in Uttarakhand state. So actually, Himachal Pradesh was the pioneer state of this monkey sterilization procedure and scheme. Then we, after Himachal Pradesh, we started this. So we first of all did the population estimate. We by we I mean the Forest Department of Uttarakhand. So there is a method called transect method, where they do the head counting of male, female, and juvenile or young monkeys in each troops and number of troops at each location. As you can see, I have written estimation. So this is because it's not the exact number. You cannot count the exact number of the rhesus macaques. But yes, of course, you can get a kind of estimation of the population. So when we did the estimation, it was around 1.5 lakhs in Uttarakhand. Then we discussed about what are the reasons, what are the factors responsible for human-monkey conflict. We are facing a lot of human-wildlife conflict in Uttarakhand. Let it be because of tiger, or let it be because of leopard, or let it be because of elephant. And this is also one of the very important human-wildlife conflict by rhesus macaques, especially in urban areas. So when we discussed and thought about what are the factors responsible, then first and foremost reason which we found was related to us only. It's the human population explosion. Then there is a loss of fragmentation of habitat. This is also related to our population only, because as human population is increasing, then we require more and more land for our residential purpose and for agricultural purposes. So we are like encroaching the forest area, converting it into agricultural lands. And because of this, we are just fragmenting the habitats of the wild animals. And this leads to increasing anthropogenic pressure on forests and widening of human-wildlife interface. By widening of human-wildlife interface, I mean to say that earlier there was a large gap between the residential areas of humans and the forest. But now, as we are moving more and more into the forest, and we are doing the deforestation and we are increasing our residential area, so now there is a large interface where the human, livestock, and wild animals are coming into close contact to each other. So this is increasing the conflict. Deforestation and scarcity of food for monkeys inside the forest. When you know the health of the forest is not good, its habitat is fragmented, we are doing deforestation. So the resources, food resources for the wild animals also decrease. Conversion of forest lands into agricultural fields, as I told you before also. Then dumping of residual eatables at open garbage sites. While we are disposing the eatables, we never think what will happen, what would be the consequence of this. So the monkeys, they are getting the eatables on the roads, on the side of the roads, or at the dump areas. So they are enjoying it, and now they have become used to it, and they know that these are the places where we can get the food. And one of our another reason which is very important is the religious region. Like we compare the rhesus macaques with Hanuman, and we have a habit of feeding them. We stop the car on the way and we feed the monkeys, and especially on Tuesday or Saturdays. So this is also changing the behavior of the monkeys, rhesus macaques, and this is also the reason for increasing the conflict. So now going to the techniques, actually the techniques which we are following at present are like we capture the monkeys from urban areas, and release them in forest areas after sterilization, capturing the monkeys and keeping them in monkey rescue centers where they are sterilized and then we release them. Capturing the monkeys, sterilizing them using minimally invasive surgical techniques, and releasing them in forest areas after post-operative care of 5 to 7 days. Usually we don't keep for 5 to 7 days, we release them after 3 days. And in some countries, some people, they actually release it on the same day also. And they say that there's no harm in releasing on the same day. But in Uttarakhand, we release after 3 days of operation. Other techniques which are proposed in the forward way are the oral immunocontraception using PZP vaccine. So it's planned. There's a scheme, there's a project being developed in Wildlife Institute of India, Dehradun. They are working on this PZP vaccination. So they want the immunocontraceptive vaccine would be like mixed in the food, and it can be administered every 6 months for a period of 4 years. Because once you give the PZP vaccine, it's not enough. You have to give the booster dose also. So if you want to go for the oral immunocontraception by PZP vaccine, you have to take care of the induction dose as well as the booster doses. Now we come to the actual procedure. What we are doing is tubectomy and vasectomy. So when we do the tubectomy, you can see the animal is already prepared and draped. So we place the animal in the supine position. And then we have to now enter into the abdomen. Now, when we talk about the entry into the abdomen, we can go by two techniques, either by the closed technique or by the open technique. So some people prefer the closed one and other prefer the open one, because you know that it's up to the discretion of the surgeon. It's the choice of the surgeon what they want to do. But we are using the closed technique. In closed technique, what we do, we use the Veress needle. We give an incision in the supraumbilical midline position, just say about 2 centimeters above the umbilicus, and then we introduce the Veress needle. And just to confirm that we are doing the introducing the Veress needle in the right way, we can hear a double click due to piercing of 2 sheaths and sudden loss of resistance. Then we know that yes, we are going in the right way. And you can further confirm whether you have placed the Veress needle properly or not by irrigation. You can take a 5 ml saline and you can just connect your syringe with the hub of this needle, and you can irrigate that 5 ml saline and then aspirate. Because if you are getting some kind of a blood or other fluid, colored fluid or something else, then you can know that you are not in the right position, and you can take it out and then try it again to put in the right position. And after that, if you see that aspiration doesn't, you don't see anything wrong in the aspiration, then further to doubly confirm, you can go for the drop test. Now, what is drop test? When you have detached the saline syringe from the Veress needle hub, then you can just drop a drop of water, saline, through the hub of the Veress needle. And if it goes down without any problem, then you can be confirmed that you are in the right place, your Veress needle is in the right place, and patency is okay. Then only you will attach the gas tube and go for the insufflation. Now, in the open technique, people prefer this, and I can say that this is much safer because you are visualizing, you are seeing everything. Like in the closed one, you are not able to see where your Veress needle is going. But in the open one, when you are using the Hassen's cannula or the trocar port, then first you say in the same way you are giving the incision in the supraumbilical midline position, then you are dissecting the subcutaneous tissue and then giving an incision over the sheath. So now you can see by your naked eyes what organs are, where they are placed. So that's why people say that this is safer. Then introduction of blunt artery forceps into the abdomen after you incise the sheath, and then you introduce the Hassen's cannula or the normal ports which we use with suture fixation under vision. So advantage of this technique is that you are doing everything under vision. Now this example shows the close technique, and this depicts how the Verey's needle goes. As I said that you can listen, you can hear 2 clicks. So this is why you can hear, because you can see in the first it's entering. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but in the first you can see that it's piercing the first sheath, and then in second the second one, and in third the Verey's needle is inside. Now insufflation is the next step. And what do you mean by insufflation is you use the carbon dioxide gas to insufflate, and which leads to distension of the abdomen. And pressure which is to be kept is to be less than 10 millimeter of mercury to avoid venous compression. We don't create a lot of pressure, and we don't create a pressure at a very fast speed, because it has their own side effects or harmful effects. So the gas flow is also to be kept at 1 liter per minute. You cannot keep the gas flow at a very high speed, because otherwise it can lead to risks like gas embolism and other complications. So we have to keep it in mind that pressure is to be kept less than 10 millimeter of mercury, and gas flow is to be kept at 1 liter per minute, or maybe less than that. Now the procedure starts. Now after we have insufflated and the abdomen is distended, now we are introducing the trocars. So you can see that in the first picture on the left, first 5 mm trocar is introduced in the abdomen, and the direction should be towards the pelvis, followed by introduction of laparoscope. Then another trocar, put another one in the 5 mm trocar in the left lateral side under vision, because in the first port you have that camera, that laparoscope. So now the second one you are doing under vision. Now you can introduce the Maryland forceps with electrosurgical unit attached to it in the left port, and first you have to perform diagnostic laparoscopy. Because before starting the actual procedure, you have to confirm that the uterus is not gravid, the animal is not pregnant, and there is no other complication like any tumor or any growth or anything inside. So first you go for the diagnostic laparoscopy, and once you are satisfied that everything is okay, then you can start your actual procedure. In these pictures, I'm sorry for the quality of the pictures is not very good, but I think you'll be able to appreciate what I want to tell you. You have to identify the urinary bladder, the uterus, the ovaries, and the fallopian tubes. You can see in the first picture, in the left row, in the left column, sorry, you can see the first picture that you can see the urinary bladder in that. And you can also have a glimpse of ovary, the white colored structure in this picture. Then in the second one, you can see more clearly the fallopian tube and the uterus, or part of uterus also. In the third picture, you can very clearly see the white colored ovary. And in the fourth picture, you can very clearly appreciate the fallopian tube being seen in this picture. Now what you have to do, once you have identified the structures clearly, you just have to hold a loop of the fallopian tube with your Maryland forceps. Then you have to coagulate and sever the loop of the fallopian tube by passing current. I have not mentioned coagulative or cutting current, but we use coagulative current because in case we are using the cutting current, there are chances of bleeding. And in coagulative current, the first coagulation happens and then the detachment happens. And because the fallopian tube in rhesus macaques is not a very thick structure, so even using the coagulating current, you can easily sever the loop of the fallopian tube. Then you have to ensure that fallopian tube is disconnected, and once you are confident that you have disconnected the fallopian tube properly, then you can repeat the same procedure for the another side of fallopian tube. And now your procedure of tubectomy is completed. Then if we talk about vasectomy, it's actually not laparoscopic, but yes, of course, it is minimally invasive technique because we are making just a 5 mm keyhole, and through that we are doing the vasectomy. So what you have to do in this, you have to prepare the animal in the same way and place it on, position it on the operation table. Then what you have to do is to make a 5 mm keyhole midline incision with help of a cautery pencil. Then you can identify the spermatic cord by digital palpation and grasp it with help of a vasectomy ring forceps, as you can see in the picture which is on the right side. In the first, we are making the hole with help of cautery pencil, and in the right picture, we are, after we identify the spermatic cord, we are grasping it with help of the vasectomy ring forceps. Sometimes when the monkey is very young, then of course we face difficulty in identifying the spermatic cord. But if you are doing it on regular basis and you have done a number of operations, then it becomes easy for you because you get experience day by day and you can do it. But yes, of course, initially in young animals, it's difficult to digitally palpate. Then you can see in the left pictures, we are lifting up the spermatic cord a little bit. You can see the white thing in that forceps, and once we lift the spermatic cord, we just make a small nick on the spermatic cord with the help of the scalpel, a very small nick. Now you can see it clearly in the left picture that we have, by making the small nick, we have now exposed the vas deferens. You can see the vas deferens in the left picture, and then holding the vas deferens with the tooth adson, we pull it out because we have to disconnect the vas deferens at two places. Like in tubectomy, we were just severing the fallopian tube at one place, but in this, we sever the vas deferens at two places, and the length of the vas deferens which we remove is around 5 centimeters. So in the right picture, you can clearly appreciate the vas deferens. So we pull it out a bit, and then we coagulate and sever the vas deferens at 2 points, 4 to 5 centimeters apart. You can very clearly appreciate the vas deferens, which is being seen in both the pictures. And in the right picture, we are using, right and left, both pictures, we are using that cautery pencil. First, we are coagulating, and then we are severing the vas deferens. Now you can clearly see in the left picture that a segment of vas deferens, a long segment around 5 centimeters of the vas deferens, has been severed and removed. And in the right picture, you can see the instruments which I was talking about in the presentation, and we use it in the vasectomy. These are the just four things we need. You can see only these many instruments are required for doing the vasectomy. And we can leave the keyhole incision as such or use a single staple to close it. Usually we leave it as such, and fortunately up till now no infection has developed in this because 5 mm is a very small hole and it heals quite easily. But of course we have to give it an antibiotic cover and the antiseptic dressing as well. So we dress the surgical wound with povidone ointment, and we administer enrofloxacin at the rate 10 mg per kg intramuscular, and injection Melonex at the rate 0.25 mg per kg intramuscular for 5 days and for 3 days if we are releasing the monkeys after 3 days. And we are using this antibiotic and anti-inflammatory, but it's up to you. It's up to your choice what you want to use. It's not mandatory that you have to use these only. So now, after talking the procedure, because I am talking about the whole monkey menace management program, so it is very important that you have to keep in mind the zoonotic disease transmission aspect into consideration whenever you are involving yourself in such kind of any program, because you very well know about the zoonotic diseases, and you know that around 60% of the diseases are zoonotic, and 75% of those 60% zoonotic diseases, they originate from wild animals. So it's very important to be careful. It's very important to take precautions. And first of all, for that, you have to know that who are those personnel who can be at risk and what are the risk points. So personals who are at risk are the monkey catchers, first of all, because they are in close contact. They are catching the monkeys and then they are transporting. So the monkey transporters, the veterinarian doing the surgeries, the pharmacist, the attendants who are helping you in preparing the animal, the forest staff, and the sweepers because they are cleaning the OT and all. So these personals, they are at risk and they should be vaccinated. And the risk points are like at the catching site, the disease can be transmitted, while during the transportation, there are chances. Then, of course, pre-operative preparation, you are touching the animal, actually touching the animal. So you're in the closest contact at that time. And also during the operation, you are at a very close contact with the animal. Then during the post-operative care, and while the staff is feeding the monkeys, and when we are going to release the monkeys, and then what happens is sometimes, because you know that the one troop of the monkeys, there is a territorial behavior in monkeys and other wild animals as well. So one troop of the monkeys, they do not tolerate the monkeys of the another troop. So sometimes what happens is, like when you are transporting them after catching, or you are transporting them for releasing, then if the monkeys of two troops are mixed in the cage, then they end up in fighting, and they can even attack you if you want to, like if you interfere in that and you want to solve the problem, they can attack you as well. And at that moment also, the disease, the zoonotic disease which the monkey is carrying, can be transmitted to you, and even through food or water which has been contaminated by monkeys. That is also a very important source of disease transmission. So I have just listed few diseases which can be transmitted. So from monkeys to human, or to humans to monkey. So from monkeys to humans, the list is like herpes B virus, tuberculosis, rabies, Casimir forest disease, amoebiasis, Campylobacter, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, Salmonella, and Shigella. And then from humans to monkey, herpes simplex can be transmitted. Tuberculosis is either side, from monkeys to human or from human to monkeys. Then hepatitis A, measles, and giardiasis. So we have to keep in mind that these diseases can be transmitted from monkeys to us, or from us to monkeys. And these are some disease transmission routes through which the transmission can happen, like through bites, through scratches, through aerosols, through saliva. That's why I was talking about the contaminated food and water, blood, urine. You can come in close contact to blood if you're not taking proper precaution, if you're not wearing the gloves and you are touching the monkey, and their feces, and of course the physical contact. These are the disease transmission routes. Now, if we know that there is a risk, then we should think about how to prevent that risk and how to minimize the zoonosis. So vaccination of the personals involved, we can do the vaccination for rabies at least, hepatitis, and tetanus. A regular health check is also necessary. And one thing I want to mention, we really don't know presently that monkeys, rhesus macaques are susceptible for corona or COVID or not. But yes, around the world, people are working on non-human primates. They are working on apes, and there might be chances that rhesus macaques also are susceptible for COVID, or they can contract COVID from us, or maybe we can contract COVID from them. But I cannot say with guarantee because it's still to be proven. It's not yet proven. Like we have cases of tiger being reported, then cases of dog and cat reported for COVID. But we still have to know about the non-human primates. But we can think this because we have a reason, because they are the closest species to the human beings, to the primates. So of course there might be chances. So we should keep that also in mind in the present scenario. Then using properly designed cages for catching and transportation of monkeys. Hiring skilled and trained monkey catchers. It's not everyone's cup of tea to catch the monkeys. Only the trained and skilled people can catch the monkeys. Usually what they do is they use the cages, and they first keep the cages open. They give some bait, something to eat, and once the monkeys are habituated, they start going inside it. First of all, what is seen is that the alpha monkey goes inside the cage first, because he has the responsibility of the whole troop. So first of all, he goes inside and checks everything is okay. And when he starts going inside and eating, then the other troop members also follow him. And when the monkey catchers see that the whole troop, or like most of the troop, has entered inside the cage, they close the cage. It's not that they manually close the cage, but it's automatic system, which they use. Then use of PPE kits is very important. Then vaccination and deworming of the captured monkeys before releasing them back into the forest. Minimal physical contact with monkeys and their body fluids of the staff, attendants, as well as the veterinarians. And you have to, of course, this is not to be said, this all of you know this very well, but I have still kept this point, that maintain proper hygiene and sanitation in monkey sterilization rescue center, and avoid to depute weak or immunocompromised staff, because they would be more prone to contract the zoonotic diseases. So this is all from my side, and I would be happy if you want to know something else about it, if you have any questions. So now I stop sharing. I'll stop sharing. Okay, so now I'm available for any kind of queries. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Aditi, for a very short and sweet journey for us to laparoscopic surgery of rhesus monkeys. We have a few questions for you, and I think these questions are of interest to you also because they deal with anesthesia more. What is the anesthesia? What are the prime anesthesias that you prefer for these primate animals?
Okay.
The induction dose and the maintenance dose.
So first of all, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned it in the presentation, but okay. A combination of xylazine and ketamine, and by combination I mean that it's mixed in the ratio of 1:5, xylazine 1 and ketamine 5. So 1:5 ratio of xylazine. So we mix it and make a mixture of this combination of two drugs, and then we use this combination. And mostly what I've seen is from 0.5 to 1 ml of this mixture is enough for the monkey to be induced properly. And then when we have to maintain Actually, we don't really need to maintain because it's such a small procedure. It takes very less time. So it's not required to maintain, but still, if we have to maintain, then we use only ketamine. Then we don't use the mixture. We don't use xylazine because, like as you know, maybe most of you know that xylazine uh, leads to respiratory depression. It decreases the respiration rate. So for maintenance, we use the ketamine only.
Any usage of gaseous anesthesia for these primates?
Actually, it should be done. It would be advisable. It's not very good option to use xylazine and ketamine, but because of the problem of access and availability, we are using xylazine and ketamine. But I will not say that it's a drug of choice. And if you have an access to medetomidine, then it would be advisable not to use xylazine, but to use medetomidine with ketamine. And if you have an access for inhalation anesthesia, then it would of course be a better option. But we don't have that facility in Uttarakhand yet, so we are using xylazine ketamine.
But any facility you have come across where this same is possible and being done? So
I have seen in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand these procedures, but at both the places, this same drug combination is being used.
okay. Anywhere
I
else?
know about other parts of the country, whether it's being done or not, the sterilization of monkeys.
Now, since we are aware that you've been good amount outside also for wildlife training program,
Yeah,
so
if you're talking about outside India, of course, they are using, yes.
yeah, okay.
One is Dr. Paolo. I don't remember his full name, but yes, they are doing, and then in some African countries also they are doing these procedures.
Another question is again close to your heart. What is the anesthesia protocol more so preferred by you for elephants?
For elephants.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever I hear about elephants, a smile floats on my face because they are my favorite. So in elephant, again, the drug of choice is etofen. Or you can use thiophantanil with combination of azapiron. But again, unfortunately, we don't have that easy access to it often in India. So we have even used, though not advisable, but we have used xylazine and ketamine in elephant also. But the disadvantage is that it takes a very long induction time, and in that time the elephant can travel to long distances and it's very difficult to catch the elephant. But still we succeeded in doing it twice in Uttarakhand because one of the elephant killed 3 people, so we used it. But if you ask about the drug of choice, then of course it's etofen or ethanol, and you can combine it with this azapiron also, and then you can use the combination. And one of the, like ketamine also you can combine with it. And if your purpose is just tranquilization, not proper immobilization, if you just want to adopt them to Boma or you just have to transport them, then you can use the tranquilizers like acepromazine or some very long acting tranquilizers like perfenazine, Zuclopanthixol, Acufase, you can use these kind of drugs. Depends on the purpose.
Right, ma'am. Another question is how do you minimize the risk of mutilation of the wound after sterilization?
Okay. So, this is the right question. We cannot prevent it totally, but yes, we can minimize the chances by not putting, first of all, monkeys of 2 different groups together, and then not putting too many monkeys in the cages so that they fight or they sit upon each other. So ideally we should keep one monkey in one cage, but it depends on how much space you have. So if you have to keep more than one monkey in the cage, the size should be according to the protocol, and then you should not mix monkeys from two different roots at all in a cage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any broad recommendations while release that you obey on?
Yeah, so I'll talk very practically. Practically, ideally, what is said, what is protocol is that um, from where you are catching the monkeys, you have to release monkeys at the same place, because as I said, they are territorial animals, they have their territories. So once you catch the monkeys from the place of their territory and then you release them in some other place which is not their territory and is the territory of another troop, then it results in infighting. But when we see the practical aspect, now if you are catching the monkeys from the city, then it is not practically possible or advisable that you release the monkeys again into the city. Then in that case, of course, it's difficult to follow the ideal protocol and you have to release the monkeys in the forest. So there are some ideal protocols and there is some practical aspect or feasibility of the protocols.
Right, ma'am. I'll say that your presentation has been very practical, so it has been crisp and short. So you have been talking practical enough. So the next question comes that probably in this webinar series, you are the third wildlife specialist coming on our. The first was probably Dr. K. K. Sharma. Then we had another from Guwahati who talked about immobilization, and you are the first field-oriented wildlife surgeon there working in the field. So many of the ladies, vets, especially surgeons or non-surgeons, are looking at this a career. So how do you react on as a lady for others, youngsters, to choose this as a career for themselves? We understand that this is a posting which comes from an outcome of a state government employment, but still, as a wildlife, what would you recommend to the lady vets of the country?
I would recommend just go ahead and grab this opportunity. It's really interesting and adventurous also, but you will not face any problem because it's not that you are alone there. You have a team. You have a team of veterinary assistants or you have a team of forest staff. So as you work in the animal husbandry department with the team, the same way you have to work with the wildlife in forest department. So don't think that there is any difficulty. It's only up to you what thinking you have, what attitude you have. Otherwise, it's not a difficult task. You can go for it. I would recommend that you should go for it.
Right, ma'am. Thank you for a lovely, crisp, yet meaningful session on laparoscopic sterilization of rhesus monkeys. That brings us to an end, but just a last question which has come up. How do you must have done some laparoscopic surgeries in dogs also. So how do you differentiate between a monkey and a dog in terms of with a surgeon's eye?
Okay, so it's about the anatomy actually. It's much easier to do the tubectomy or vasectomy in rhesus macaques, a tubectomy laparoscopically in rhesus macaques, but in dogs it's not that easy. So it's a difference of the anatomy, it's the difference of the position, because the way we can position the rhesus macaque we cannot do for the dog or cat. Even in cat, it's not very common to go for the laparoscopic tubectomy, or in the canines to go for the laparoscopic tubectomy. So this is the difference. It's easier in rhesus macaques.
Okay. So what Dr. Aditi means to say is human practice, primate practice is easier than veterinary practice.
Yeah.
So which is what I derive from there. So
No, actually, because of the position of the
yeah.
organ.
So similarly, we say human surgery is easier than veterinary surgery. That
Primary.
is
whether
What
they're
is
human or non-human.
the last question? It's from Dr. Zama from Jammu. He says, "What changes in behavior are noticed after sterilization? Do you observe or?"
Very important question. So everything in wild animals is about dominance because they are territorial animals. They prove their dominance over the others and they become the if I particularly talk about monkeys, the rhesus macaques, there are alpha males. Alpha males are the one who are the most dominant ones and they are the leader of the troop. So after this, when you do the sterilization, or maybe just because of the human interaction or close proximity to the human, so they, of course, there is a changed behavior. And I'm not saying that the hormone is not produced anymore, the testosterone is not being produced anymore, because we are just disconnecting the vast difference. But yes, because they're not habitual to such kind of human interactions, so they, I don't know the exact reason, but they somehow feel a little docile or stressed, and there is a change in the behavior. And sometimes it happens like another male where they are released. If they are not released in their own territories, then the alpha male of that area, he dominates over the alpha male of the troop being released after sterilization. So I cannot say with guarantee what is the reason, but yes, it has been observed. Such things have been observed.
Okay. So, do you mean to say they become less ferocious as an individual, as an animal?
I'll say more stressed, and due to the stress, of course, they can be less ferocious or a little bit docile or scared.
Okay.
Yeah.
The last question, I don't know why our audience is putting questions in the last period. Could you explain about PZP vaccine?
Okay, so PZP vaccine, that zona pellucida vaccine, it doesn't allow the fusion of the ovum and the sperm. So instead of fusion of the actual sperm and the ovum, the PZP vaccine which we are giving, that fuses with the ovum or the sperm. So that is why you know that covering that it's a protective covering. So it doesn't allow the fusion of the actual ovum and sperm. But it's it's feasible. It's not feasible just to give one dose and you think that the animal will not breed. If you really want that the animal should not breed, then you have to give the booster doses as well. This immunocontraception with by using PZP has been tried in number of animals in especially African countries, in elephants, in giraffes, and in many animals. But in India, they are trying to use it in monkeys only because they are not getting permission to use it in elephant. Elephant is a Schedule 1 animal, so there is some legal issue. They are not able to. But wherever it has been used, it's not being used as a management tool. The as a sterilization uh, uh, what to say like routine sterilization, because everywhere it's on trial basis, and where they have the animals in captivity, where they can approach them again and give the booster dose, then only they are succeeding. Otherwise they revert back and they start breeding after say 1 year or 2 year if you are not giving the booster doses.
Okay. So, as per the literature, booster is required when?
Yeah, booster is advisable. Booster has to be given.
Any idea when?
When? Like about after 6 months?
Okay. So every year once or?
Yeah, every year once you can go, or sometimes it depends on the species whether you have to repeat it after 6 months or you have to repeat. Like if we are talking about elephants or giraffes, then annually booster is okay.
Now, being a vet, looking at the Indian scenario, maybe I would say that it could be tried in deers in the captive animals.
Yeah, in the captive animals, it can be tried.
Deers in special.
Yeah.
Because I understand two animals are in plenty numbers and required to be controlled. One is monkey and one is deers in India. So,
But I'm not in favor of the oral one. The parental one is better because in the oral you cannot regulate the dose. You cannot be sure because you are mixing with the bait and giving to the animals. So you don't know whether the each and every animal has taken it, or maybe the double dose has been taken by one animal and the another hasn't taken anything. So parental immunocontraception of PZB would be better than the oral one.
that brings us to the end of the webinar, ma'am. Thank you
My
for
pleasure.
an elaborate journey into laparoscopic sterilization, and thank you for agreeing to be the first speaker of the Lady Month. We are
For me, actually.
also honored by your presence. So, on behalf of ISVS and INTAS, we thank all the veterinarians, all the people who have been present for the webinar. We thank one and all. On behalf of, we also thank the President, the Executive Secretary of ISVS, and all the members of ISVS for being there. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are coming to the close, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.